Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's begin. Kumlen Ablat Gemara, we are up to Daf Sama Gimel Amud Aleph. 2 lines from the top, 3 lines from the top. Siman. This is like a sign of what we're going to be talking about. Isha, a woman, Karka, Ezer, support, Zois, Shtei, Habrochas, and Tagri Pachses. We'll see. Amr Ablaza said, any man that doesn't have a woman in his life, no, he's not married, Eina Adam is incomplete. Because, a man and a woman, as Chassidus explains, are 2 halves of one neshama. There's the feminine side of the neshama, there's the masculine side, and the 2 come together. So remember, it says, Zocher and Nekeva Bra. Hashem created them a male and a female. Only then are they whole. Vayikra Shmam Adam. And together, they're called Adam. That makes you a complete person. Makes each of you, the man and the woman, a complete person. Rabbi says, any person that doesn't own property, ain't no Adam, is not a person. Remember, it says, Hashemayim, Shemayim, Hashem, Adam. The heaven is for Hashem, the earth, the land, the ground is for people. And Tais has already explained the main purpose of the land here is to build a house on it. It doesn't mean just a piece of land, it means owning a home, a roof on your head. That makes you a complete person. Amr Abba says, it says in Pasuk, Hashem says, let me make a support for Adam Rishon. Zocha, Ezra means support, Keneged means opposite him, seems to be incongruous. So he says, Zocha, if you merit it, Zarta should be a support. You'll be together. Loi Zocha, if you don't merit it, Keneged, you'll be constant rivalry. Igad on the other side, Rabbi Loza asked the following question. Ksiv, it's written Kenagdoi, Karinen Kenegdoi. The way it's written is Kenagdoi, which means like being whipped. But we read it Kenegdoi as if being opposite. Zacha, if you merited Kenegdoi. Lo Zacha Menagdosai. Zacha, you merited, and it'll be opposite you. In other words, together. But if you're not Zacha, it'll turn into whipping. In other words, it'll be rivalry and dissension. Ashkech Rabbi Yisrael once encountered Eliyahu Navi. Amalek Siv, he said to Eliyahu, it says, Ezel make a support. How does a woman help out a person? What exactly does it mean? Amalek Eliyahu said to him, Adam maybe chitin, the person's out farming, he brings home wheat. Chitin kaisen, can you chew that wheat? Pishtin, he brings home flax. Pishtin like, can you wear flax? No, the woman takes the wheat and turns it into flour and then make bread out of it that you can consume. Turns the flax into linen and you can make clothing out of it. Don't you see how she lights up his eyes by making food and puts him on his feet, dresses him? Said, my receiver says in Pasuk, Adam Rishon says, this time, as if there were other times, or this is the time. Etzem atomei, a bone from my bones, a bus of sorry, and flesh, my flesh, and that's chava. What do you mean this time? He had relations with every animal, and his God died. Didn't feel that there was any relationship there. Until he had relations with Chava. That all the nations of the world will bless themselves in you in Avram. I have 2 brachas. I have 2 also means 2 branches. I have 2 branches that I want to bring from you. Rus Hamayavia, Rus from a nation Maya. We're not allowed to marry Maya, but the women's side you could. And Oma Ha'amainis, and Oma from Amainis. Who were they? Rus was obviously was the ancestor of David, and Naama, who married David, was the ancestor of Rechavam and Chizkiah HaMelech, Yeshaya HaNavi, all these great luminaries. Kol Mishpachos Adama, all the families on the ground. What do you mean all the? I feel even those who cannot afford to live above ground, they live in caves underneath the ground, will always bless their children to be like Abraham. They do not get blessed only on account of Avraham Avinu. All the nations of the world, even those ships that travel from Gallia to Aspamia. We know Aspamia is Spain. Spain is like the end of the Mediterranean there. And near the end, maybe in those days, Portugal and Spain were really one country. So went all the way to the end of the Mediterranean, to the big Atlantic Ocean. And Gallia, we're not sure. Some want to say Gallia is Galil. So it's from Israel all the way there. Others want to learn Gallia, other parts, they want to say Italy, but Italy is too close, so it's no big deal. So L'chayr, it's somewhere close to Eretz. So, the tire at that time where the civilization was. Everything that happens in the world, not only to Eden, but to the world at large, happens because of the Eden, results because of the Eden, the way they behave. and what we deserve. In the future, it'll be that everyone will drop their trades and they'll become farmers. As we know, where the Pasuk says, the Yardu Me'ani Yasem, they will all disembark from their ships. All those who hold on the sails, Malachim, all the sailors, Kol Chaygle Hayam, all those who travel on water, Al Ha'aretz Yam, they will all descend and step down onto the ground. So ultimately, the future is going to be farming. Then he says, which is then hard to reconcile these two statements, that there is no more, there's no lower or elementary job or lower job than being a farmer. It says they will disembark from the ships, as if to say this is called a yerida, a step down. He once saw this ground, he saw that on this land that they were planting cabbage, but they did the rows widthwise, which is not very smart, because when the cows travel and they have to go around and plow, they take up wherever whenever they turn, they ruin all the land around it. There'll be a lot of turns. Land usually was much longer than wider. Amalei, he said to them, even if you turn around and you make all your furrows lengthwise, it'd be far better to be involved in business. Rav, all the Beit Shivli, he once went between a bunch of stalks. Chazuni the Konayf, he saw the wind was blowing them and waving them. I don't care how much the wind will blow them. It's much better to go into business. Sounds like a real capitalist. Even though some Sefer writes, predates Karl Marx, he writes that working on the land is much more beneficial for many reasons, myriad of reasons. As we'll soon see, the does have some positive things about working on the land. Omar Rabba says, in fact, some say the reason why we're all going to be working on the land is because then you can do all the mitzvahs of Truma and Maisa. If you do business, you're missing out on so many mitzvahs. All the mitzvahs we do with the land, and Shemitah. And so in this year, they were selling land all over the world. You could buy a little parcel of land, I don't know, centimeter by centimeter, and not toil it, so that you're fulfilling the mitzvah of Shemitah. So if you have land, you can do all these additional mitzvahs. In fact, the Gemara says in Satan, why did Moshe Rabbeinu want to go to Eretz Yisrael? So that he can do all these mitzvahs he have in Eretz Yisrael that you don't have anywhere else. Amar Rabbi says, Rabbi, if you invest $100 in a business, every day, you'll make some profits. Every day you can afford meat and wine. Invest $100 in your land. All you're going to have is all kinds of issues that you can end up eating only the underdeveloped vegetables and that are salty and so on. And furthermore, many times you'll have to sleep on the land to watch it and monitor it and make sure it's protected. And it also causes a lot of strife and arguments, who owns this part of the land, your land is overlapping my land, and who's taking the water, so many different disputes. The more it sounds like business, everything is straightforward. Nobody argues in business. It's only in farmers. Nevertheless, it is best you should have your own little hobby farm. You should plant your own vegetables, below tasbin, and you should not buy out in the marketplace. Better to feed yourself. Even the price is the same. There's no monetary advantage in toiling your own land and planting your own vegetables. These get blessed because there's a blessing in the Torah. There's so many blessings in your own vegetable. Plus, the Gemara Bava Metzia says that if you don't really have an exact number, maybe you can put the blessing in there far greater. So therefore, also Mavarchan is you can go ahead and do these mitzvahs that you couldn't do otherwise. Says the Gemara, Zavi is better if let's say you're some chas v'shalom, you're losing money and everything else, and you're facing bankruptcy. It's far better Zavi sell some of your items, your pots and pans, whatever other things, but like Tazel before you become poor. Don't be a hoarder and just start selling and pawning whatever you have so that you don't have to face poverty. But that's only talking about, let's say, utensils and furniture. But your immediate clothing do not sell. Why? Because you'll have to go out, have meetings and try to present yourself. People judge you by the clothes you wear, much more than anything else. They don't see the house that you live in. They don't know about the furniture that's inside your house. But what they do see is your clothing. If you present yourself well, you'll get a far better hearing. So make sure that your clothes you retain. If you have a little, I'm going to give you general advice. If you have a little crack, a breach in your wall, fill when you're saying you have a crack, don't wait till it gets worse. fill it straight away. V'lei tashpitz, and don't have to make the crack bigger in order to make a big job out of it. Don't take a small job and turn it into a big job. If you can fix it straight away, and it's a small job, do it. But what happens to you're a person that you're a very generous person, and you're prodigious, and you're profligate, and you don't have a problem, spending a bit for a few dollars, then shpeitz. Okay, so make the crack a little bigger so that you can make it nicer and fill it up nicer, and it'll look better. But never v'lei. Don't bring down the entire wall and get involved in building, because you should know when you renovate a house and you're doing building, you're getting sick, because watching your house and renovating it, a time is never a time, and the amount of money is never the amount of money. It just causes you harm. How true that is. So I think more further. If you have a deal that comes by your way to buy some real estate, don't think too much, buy it. Because it'll always go, even if you overpay a little bit now, it'll eventually go up in price. When it comes to marrying a woman, don't jump into it. Take your time, pause, take your time, think about it, find out who she is, make sure that's compatible. Which is interesting, because you have some communities where they meet each other for 45 minutes and then they go ahead and get married. And the Gemara seems to say, no, you should go out for a while and make sure that you know each other. And because the Gemara in Kedusha says it's not Ahavas Yisrael if you marry somebody and 5 minutes later it doesn't work out. So Masayin is to take your time, be galasan, and nosiv itz, and then go ahead and get married. As Rashi says, otherwise the relationship will not be a very settled relationship. It turns out to be that she's cantankerous or you are. It doesn't work. It works both ways. Nochis dargen nosibitza. When it comes to Gemara is giving advice out. When it comes to marrying a woman, don't marry somebody who's superior to you, because then she will have no respect for you, and the marriage is not going to be very pleasant. Sok darka again, and therefore better marry somebody who perhaps that is either equal or even a little bit less knowledgeable than you, so that she'll respect you. But when it comes to a friend, always try to get a friend, or not so much a friend, but a mentor. Always get a mentor who's smarter than you, so that they can guide you in the right direction. You don't need somebody who is equal to you that you can do it yourself. Anything bad that happens in the world only happens b'shvil Yisrael on account of the Yidden. Hashem is trying to point to us that we should do tshuva. Amazing, this Gemara in light of what happened in the world in the last 2 years. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Hichrati goyim, that I cut down the goyim, neshamu pinoisam, and I get rid of the corners. Echrafti chutzeisam, I destroyed the chutzeisam, and so on and so forth. And the next pasuk says, Eksiv, and then it says, Amarti, I said to myself, Achtidi oisi, that you should, that you guys should learn a lesson for what I'm doing. I used to doing things for the whole world, and he wants the Eden to learn a lesson. So it's clear whatever's happening is happening as some kind of a message to us. Let's hope we can work out the message to get all this over and done with. Further more further, Rav once bade farewell to his uncle Rab Chia. Rab Chia said to him, I give you a bracha that the Eibusher should protect you, that you should never have to suffer or endure something which is even worse than death. So the Gemara asks, Rab was thinking to himself, what could be worse than death? Not like he went, Doki search, and he found a pasuk where Shlomo Melech says, I find marne mavos. You know what's worse than death? As Isha, if you're married to a woman who hates you for whatever reason, life can be a long living experience that's far worse than death. Gemara says, which is fascinating. You have these Amoraim, we're going to have now these giant Amoraim, and they didn't really get on with their wives. Rav, his wife would constantly taunt him and cause him anguish. If he would tell her, go ahead and make me some kind of lentils, she would make him something else, beans or peas or whatever. If he would ask for peas, to make lentils. Whatever he asked for, she did exactly the opposite. He had a son Chia when eventually he grew up, and he asked the son, go tell your mother I would like dinner tonight. When he went to his mother, he knew his father wanted, if his father said, ask your mother to make me lentils, he would go to his mother and say, father wants peas. And what would she do? She'd make lentils. So when he came home that night, for the first time in his life, he got exactly what he asked for. Your mother must have improved. His son was so proud of himself. He said, I know the kafitla. No, she didn't improve at all. I swapped things around. So Rav said two things. First, he gave him a big compliment. He said, this is what people say, the nofik minoch, that your child that comes from you, time malafa, he can teach you a thing or two about life. In other words, kids can be smarter than parents. But then he said to him, he reprimanded him, you should never have done this because you lied. It says, you should teach them that they don't teach them to lie, because eventually, even in the case where it's right, they'll go wrong. It seems clear from the Gemara here that Rav himself could have lied. It's his son who couldn't. Rav could have lied because of Shalom Bayis. If he would have said, give me lentil when he wanted peas, and she would have given him lentil, it would be Shalom Bayis, there'd be no strife in the house. So he could have done it. He just didn't chapzich. And you're allowed to, we're learning about Mitzvah, and the Mitzvah is that you're allowed to lie for Shalom Bayis. And then later on, the Gemara also with the sorrow that you're allowed to be Mashana at certain times. But to Rav's son, since it wasn't relevant to himself, it was relevant to somebody else, he had no right to. The Gemara said Reb Chia, his uncle, had the exact same thing. So when Reb Chia gave his blessing to Rav, he was talking from personal experience. Reb Chia had a commitzayla. This is an amazing thing. Reb Chia also, his wife is antagonizing. Yet, ki having mishkach midi, whenever he was going, he traveled, especially when he travels, but when he came back, he would buy her a present and wrap it up nicely. And give her a present, even though she gave him a hard time. Rabbi Grona, when he used to travel overseas, the Rebbe used to tell him to bring home his wife a present. He has to bring a present, like Rabbi Chia here. Only Rav, so Rav, his nephew, said to him, "Come inside, I don't think you're giving her presents and gifts. She's ruining your life." Amalei said, "Dayenu, she is a fantastic mother. She gadlos benenu. Maybe as a wife, she's not great, but she's a great mother. Umatilenu isanu and min hachet. And also, at the end of the day, she is our wife, and we have relations. So therefore, I have to do the right thing. It's not exactly the way I wanted it. That's selfish on my part. I have to thank her for being the person that she is," which is a pretty amazing thing. Says you more further. Rabbi Yehuda, the great Amor Rabbi Yehuda that we always learn about, who used to say things in the name of Rav, name of Shmuel, said to Rabbi Yehuda, his son. It says in Pasuk, ani mar memavet. What do I find? Worse than death? Ese isha. His son said, "Wow, what kind of woman is that?" So Rabbi Yehuda said, your own mother. He said that your own mother, that's what the pasuk is referring to. It says, "How can it be?" But Master Rabbi Yehuda, on another occasion, Rabbi Yehuda taught Rabbi Yitzchak another pasuk. The greatest joy comes to a person. Like we learned yesterday, all those wonderful, beautiful things about being married. It says the greatest joy comes to a person of your mother, and Isha Shayna from the first wife that you have. It says, that your origin should be blessed. And you'd be happy from the first wife they had when you're youth. And his kid asked him, for example, which woman are you referring to? He said, your mother. One minute he says that your mother is Mamra mother. Another minute he says that your mother is the happiest thing in my life. How does that work? Says the Gemara, one answers, Mas gift kifer. She has a short fuse, short temper. But it's very easy to placate her. And therefore, at the end, it was all right. So maybe Rav Chia also, he said, bring a present, and Rav also. They used to get very angry for whatever reason, but they used to calm down very quickly as well. What's an example of, now this is interesting, why the Gemara has to tell us what an Ishara is, because sometimes people convince themselves, Chas v'shalom, that the reason why the relationship is not going the way it should go is because it's her fault. And the Gemara says, no, maybe it's your fault. Why do you blame her? Maybe you're not behaving properly. But the Gemara is going to give a few examples that this kind of behavior definitely is a sign that there's something not right in the relationship, and that you counseling, or that she is deliberately. No, but when she deliberately does something, even if it's your fault, but if she's being spiteful, then that's not right. For example, Amar Abaya, she sets a table. So on one hand, beautiful, setting the table, but then she unleashes a tirade against you nonstop until you sit down by the table, even though you have done nothing. That's one example. Rabbi says, Rabbi says, sets a table, and then she refuses to sit in the same table with you and eat, as if she's doing her duty because she's a person that does her duties right, but there's zero love in this relationship. So she's not interested in sitting, she turns her back to you. When a person marries a woman, his sins dissipate. In fact, we're having more brachas of when a person gets married, all of his sins, and one of them is a chassan. The day is chasna and a kala, all the sins disappear. It's like Yom Kippur. That's why they fast. Says the Gemara, what do you mean they all disappear? They all get, remember it says, Motza Isha Motza Taif, the Yafig Rosm Hashem, and the Shem's desire should come out. And therefore, it's like covers over all of the various. Marava in Israel, Kinasi, there's a difference with the Gemara hearing more brachas. Mispakning means they get covered over. So the sins are still there, but he glossed them over. In brachas, it says they all get forgiven, that all the sins are gone. So maybe these two Gemaras are arguing with each other because it's not the same thing. But Marava in Israel, when a person used to get married in Israel, we had to say more brachas. A person used to get married, Umberly used to say the following: Matzah or Meitzah. What do you mean matzah meitzah? Matzah is referring to a pasuk where it says matzah matzah type. Wow, what a wonderful thing! And meitzah isha. The worst thing is so asking how is your relationship going? Is it matzah or meitzah? So there's actually I want to say the beautiful pshat. Why that meitzah and isha ma'amavis? Why taka? Do we find that meitzah and isha ma'amavis? Because look at the word matzah isha matzah type. There's nothing about you. It's all about her. If you found you have a relationship with a woman and it's all about her, it's fantastic. But if a might say ani, if it's all about me, I found myself, then isha mothers. If you're in your relationship, you're not interested in contributing, you only want whatever benefits yourself. It's all about ani. What is in it for me? It's not going to work. Or others say matzah is past tense and mitzvah is present tense. Matzah means past tense. You found a very good woman, and therefore that's it. You don't have to look any further. And mitzvah means you're continuously looking, but you don't feel happy. You're not settled where you are right now. Taking one further, if you have a bad wife, there's a mitzvah to divorce her. It's actually a mitzvah to divorce. We're not talking about any avedas happened there, which we're learning about in Mark Suvas and so on. We're talking about the relationship is not good. There's no point in staying married. Then there's a mitzvah to divorce, because the pasuk says, Gorash lates. If you divorce, a lates is somebody who's a joker, and the yates modern, and then what will happen is modern, all the arguments will disappear. The yishvas din v'kolan, and things will calm down and abate, and all the shame will be gone. In other words, there shouldn't be what Rabbi is saying, there shouldn't be a stigma. Oh, I don't want to get divorced because of the stigma, or it's bad for the children. If it's not working out, really in a bad way, sometimes it's terminal. And the Torah gave us a whole parsha about divorce. It has to happen. And for whatever reason, you're both good people, but you're not compatible. V'amar Rava, says Rava, Isha Ra, if she's bad to you, uksuvasa meruba. But the problem is that, because the ksuvas we have today is a standard ksuva, but they used to, the Sfardim still do today, but everybody did. They used to do a Tanai ksuva. They used to add to the ksuva. Over and above whatever's in the ksuva, I'll also offer you this and that if it doesn't work out. Or, if Chasvama pass away. So what happens if you want to divorce her, but you just can't afford it? Ksuvasa meruba. It's too much. What should you do? And so you have to somehow or another convince her to want to leave this marriage, and regardless of the ksuvanats, what you do is threaten her you're going to marry another woman, and then it becomes unpleasant for her as well, because there'll be a rivalry, and if the other woman sides with him, it becomes 2 against 1. It'll be uncomfortable for her. You'll get much more out of her if you threaten her to bring another woman in than to hit back and shout back and all that. Silsa literally means like with a thorn. In other words, if you're going to fight back, what are you going to gain from it? Nothing. That having being married to a woman that's bad to you is no different than a stormy day. Shnema says in Pasuk Delef Toired B'Yom Sagir. It says that Delef constantly grips the water, and it bothers you. B'Yom Sagir on a stormy day. The Eishes Medonim Nishtave, and a woman who fights is no different, because it's constant. It's not just a one-off thing. Everybody has sometimes differences of opinion, but it's a constant thing. And that's difficult. Like a stormy day. Look how wonderful a good woman is. You don't know how terrible the bad woman is. You should tell you how wonderful a good woman is. See if it says you found a good woman, it's good for you. Now, if it's not an allegory, it's not a metaphor, the Torah is really talking about a good woman. No, Torah says the Torah says she's a wonderful woman. What better praise than that? And even Torah, it's a metaphor for Torah when it says woman. It means Torah, because we're learning about Sanhedrin that Torah tzivulana Moshe ma'ires is as if we're engaged to the Torah. So we're talking about Torah. Kama Torah isha Torah. How wonderful is a woman? On the contrary, even greater praise. This Torah is comparing itself to a Isha Taiva. What can be more noble than that? Kamara Isha, how bad is a bad woman? It says the Isha is worse than death. About a bad woman, literally. Kamara Isha, Shakosa Begana. Wow, terrible. The Torah itself uses it to say how bad it is. It's worse than death. And even Gehenim, if it's merely a metaphor for Gehenim, then Kamara Isha Gehenim, you're comparing Gehenim to Isha. It says further, it says in the pasuk, the Navi says, "It may be Rosh Hashanah. I'm going to bring you something really bad that you cannot get out of." I'm not what you're referring to. When you can't get out, you can always escape something bad happening. No, this is not a bad woman, but you can, a hefty amount of money you have to pass on to her for the ksuba, and you can't afford it. And what do you do then? So therefore, you're sort of stuck. Hashem that Abishah gave it to me. I cannot stand up. Same thing. You cannot get up. You cannot get out of it because you're stuck with the ksuba. Remember, you cannot divorce without giving ksuba. In Israel, they said, a guy he does not have a farm, and everything that he buys is based on money, and that is unsettling because you don't know if inflation can come in, hyperinflation can set in, and you don't know. It will be droughts and everything comes over that you are relying on others and you have no idea what's going to happen. But it says in the curses that your children will be belong to another nation. Who's another nation? If your father has to marry another woman, so it's a stepmother. And many times the stepmother doesn't really get on with the stepchildren. So therefore, that's what it means, another nation who's going to take care of you. So the pasuk, novel, these are all the curses. It says, the goy novel in a terrible nation, in a repugnant nation, I'll make them angry. What do you mean? It's referring to actually an Ishara. But the problem is that you cannot afford to give her a get because the ksuba is too great. It says, it's actually referring to who is this goy novel, this repugnant nation that is talking about the tzdukim, who don't really believe in the Chazal. Actually, it says in Pasuk, this maneuver says in their heart, Ein Elikim, there's no God. Ein Elikim, obviously it's talking about tzdukim, they don't believe in Hashem in the way we do. Now, it's actually a bit odd, because tzdukim do believe in Hashem, they believe in Torah Shebiksav, they don't believe in Torah Shebapeh. So they say that the word tzdukim was put in by the censor. They actually were talking about the Christians, the minim, Apikursim, and the censors took it out and put in tzdukim. Because otherwise tzdukim doesn't make sense. They do believe in Eibishter. They don't believe in Chazal. These are the people from Baravia, which are known as barbarians, Anshe Maritoine from Mauritius. These are why they're called barbarians, because these were people who were completely uncivilized, very primitive, that they walk around naked in the street. There's nothing worse and more repugnant to Hashem and repulsive than people walking around, I guess, either scantily dressed or not dressed at all. Rabbi Yechon says, Elu Chaborim. No, this is talking about a nation. We had them Sechta Shabbos. These are terrible, terrible people known as the Chaborim. And in fact, Rabbi Yechon said to Rabbi Yechon, also Chabori Babel. These evil people came to Babel, this nation called Chaborim. As soon as he heard that, Shoga Nafal, he fell off his seat. And he felt terrible for the Yidden living in Babel. He lived in Israel, but he felt terrible for the Yidden living in Babel because these were terrible Rishayim. And they showed total disrespect to the Yidden. But they said to him, there's one redeeming feature. They're more than happy to accept bribes. Then he sat back up in the chair. There's hope. Gozru al Gimel, the Chaborim came and they made 3 decrees, Mitnei Gimel, and the Jews deserved those punishments because of 3 things, the way they misbehaved. Gozru al Abbas, the first thing is they put in laws of anti-slaughter. No shchit is allowed in Babel. Now, why did that happen? Because the Yidden refused to give the gifts that they have to give to a kohen. Now, there's actually an argument if all the gifts that you have to give to a kohen from an animal and so on, does it apply in Chutz La'aretz? Rabbi Yechon is of the opinion, like Rabbi Yehuda, it does. And Rabbi Loi paskins that even though then, yes, but today, after the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, there's no mitzvah in Chutz La'aretz. But Rabbi Yechon felt, consistent with his view, that the Yidden should have given to the kohenim, and they didn't. Number 1. Number 2, Gozer al Mechatzais. They banned all the bathhouses. Why? Because the people were not very careful, particularly in the laws of mikveh. And the third thing they did was, which is awful, they exhumed all the bodies that were buried, all the Jewish cemeteries. And why did the Jews deserve that? Because they joined them in all the Goyish holidays, and they drank with them and celebrated with them together. So therefore, the previous generation were punished. And though the Eden kid hit such a low depth, the parents are also liable, and therefore they were punished. Then it says, Hashem punish you and your ancestors. How would the ancestors punish the dead already? They were being exhumed from their graves. The living sin, then they do despicable sins. The Mesim are also liable. The parents are liable. How did the child behave in such a way? It must be the parents' fault. It says in Pasuk. It says the Pasuk. It says that they will not gather together. They will not be buried. They will lie there like excrement on the ground. That's how they're going to be. And then it says, that things will be so bad, you prefer to die rather than live. But dying is also no good because they're going to take your bodies out of the ground. Why would they prefer dying? That so you're saying here that we, not that they will choose, that it'll be chosen for them, for the Rishayim. So they shouldn't be able to continue living as long as they're alive in this world. They're continuing to sin, doing them a favor. If they die prematurely, they will no longer sin. And the Yibul will be Gehenim, they'll go to Gehenim. At least they'll go to Gehenim, and eventually they'll go to Gan Eden. Kosev b'Sefer ben Sira. Ben Sira was Yirmiyahu's, according to some, was Yirmiyahu Hanavi's son. And in fact, the word Sira, the gematria is the same as Yirmiyahu. Sira is Samach 60, Rages 200, and Yud is 10. So at 270, and Aleph is 271. And Yirmiyahu is exactly the same gematria as 71. And because he wasn't born in a natural way, he was born by Yirmiyahu once being in a bathtub, and some semen escaped, and then this woman came in the bathtub, and she fell pregnant from that. So it was called Yirmiyahu. It says that Yirmiyahu and Ben Sira were learning together Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah was written by Avraham Avinu, and it says Yirmiyahu used to use the Sefer to make things happen because it's a Kabbalah, and he sat and learned 3 years together. It says 3 years they sat together and learned Sefer Yetzirah. And so, but this is Apocrypha, and the Gemara Sanhedrin is going to disagree with a number of things that he said. But here the Gemara brings things that we agree with. So this is the advice that he gives. Having a good wife is the greatest gift for a man. And it says in Pasuk that that's a God-fearing person, it will be zeicher to have a good wife. But but if it turns out to be that she's a bad wife, tzaras l'baylas, like a leprosy, which is always there. It's not a one-off thing; it's always there. Maita kante, what's the solution? You go shana, you should divorce her, divorce her, and that will heal him from his tzaras. In other words, you remove the cause, the effect will go away. Isha yafa, if a woman is actually yafa, is physically and spiritually. She's pretty and she's also very edel. Yafa means a midas. And Ashrei Baila, not only is the husband the luckiest guy in the world, but Misper Yamav Kiflayim. He feels like he's living a lot longer than his life. It's like he's double his life because she's pretty Nayom Haza, and also she's a Baal Midas Tavis. So therefore everything is great. Anything else that happens in life is secondary or insignificant in comparison. Avoid looking at pretty women because you might get caught up in their net. I'll tell you, do not turn towards their husband and become too friendly with the husband of someone like that. To sit with him, spend time, and drink with them. Keep it because this is the cause of many people who destroy their lives. There were many wounds in those peddlers who used to go from house to house. These Hoover salespeople go from house to house. Only women were home and not the husbands. Because many times, on many occasions, they used to have relations with these women who were frustrated. And Kinitzas Mavigachelas was like a spark that ignited a piece of coal, like a nest or like a chicken coop full of birds. Came Batayim Malayim Mimra. So too, their homes are full of mimra, deceit, and lies. They have a lot of stories to tell. Then he said, interesting advice. You should never sit today and worry about tomorrow. Who said you'll be around tomorrow? Maybe you're not going to be around tomorrow. So what are you sitting here and worry about tomorrow? You should only worry about today. You're worrying about things that not even belong in your world. The next thing is, don't have too many people coming to your house. Don't invite everybody to your house. You should be very friendly, befriend as many people as you can. When it comes to trusting someone, you should be discreet. You should trust someone, choose 1 in 1,000 that you can trust. Most people you cannot trust. Rabbi Yassi says, Ein ben David bo we had this a few days ago. Mashiach will not come until this chamber known as Guf. Why is it called Guf? Because all those neshamas have to eventually come down into a Guf. Mashiach will not come until all the neshamas have been removed. We learned more in the last few days was, and in fact, that's the cause. That's the basis of the mitzvah Puravu. We want to bring Mashiach. That's the whole basis. But Rabbi Huna said that in the repudiate. Shnemet says, because also to populate the world. Shnemet says, "Kiruach lofonai," these spirits is neshamas. Before my yata with delay neshamas sisi, and I'll make more neshamas. In other words, that these neshamas are there to clear out this place. I'm waiting so I can remove all the neshamas before I can bring the gula. Tanya Blazer says, "Kol misha ain't oisig with period. Anybody who does not occupy themselves and bringing children to the world, kilo shayfer damim." It's as if they're spilling innocent blood. Shenemar says, "Shayfer dama adam be'adam dami." If somebody pours out the blood of a person inside a person, his dama, his own blood, should be poured out. And the next part he says, "Va'atem." So what do you mean? If you're not doing puravu, it's as if you are spilling innocent blood. Rabbi Yaakov says, you are reducing the Eibush to himself. It says, we are the image of Hashem, and if you don't bring out more images of Hashem, you're reducing the glory of Hashem. Benazai says, I think you did both. You were killing people, you're not bringing the neshamas to the world as if you're killing them, by not bringing that neshamas to the world as if you killed it, and let alone abortion and all that, which is far worse. And you're reducing also the glory of Hashem. It says, a beautiful saying. Yes, there are some people that know Dairish, they darshan beautifully, and the no mekayim, and they practice what they preach, and they behave that way. There are others no mekayim, they practice very nicely. They know Dairish, but they're lousy speakers. And then you have people, but you are the worst. No Dairish, you speak so eloquently, but ain't no mekayim, but you don't practice what you preach, because he wasn't married; he was a bachelor. And here he's telling us that the worst thing, if you're a bachelor, bring kids in the world, this and this. What should I do? Nafshi choshka b'Torah. I desire learning Torah. What about children? There are others who can bring children into the world. According to the Rambam, there's a machlekes the Rambam and others, whether this applies to anybody who wants to learn Torah, like the Rambam says, it applies to anybody who feels like Benazah, they want to learn Torah, so then they don't have to get married. In fact, the Rambam uses the expression, if oisig ben mitzvah patam and a mitzvah, if you're doing one mitzvah, you exempt another one. Surely, if you're learning Torah, you exempt another mitzvah. But the Rosh and other Rishonim say, no, this only applies to an exclusive club like Benazah. It doesn't apply to anybody today. And even in the times of Tanaim, Benazah was exclusive. And in the other Gemara we learned, that Benazah was married. He actually was married to Rabbi Akiva's daughter. And then he divorced her. Rabbi Akiva's daughter told her mother that I am better than you. You allowed, Rabbi Akiva, my father, to separate for 24 years to become the great Rabbi Akiva. But eventually he came back and he had children. I gave up my husband forever so that he can learn Torah. Tanya Luna Braisa, very similar. Rabbi Lezer said, but just different name. Rabbi Lezer calls me, if we don't have children, killing innocent blood, it's Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah, not Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Azariah says, you're reducing the glory of Hashem. And Ben Azai says, what should I do? Ben Azai, yes, no, the same thing. What we learned. We say this in davening. That when he rests, It says Shuva Hashem. We say that bring Shuva Hashem, rest the Eibishter. Rivas obviously Rivas is 2 times 10,000, 20,000, and Alpha is 2,000, 22,000 Yidden. In other words, the Shechina, She'ein had Malamed teach you. She'ein Shechina Shayda Apochel She'alav She'alav Yisrael. You need a minimum of 22,000 people for the Eibush to rest. 22 is the letters in the Sefer Torah. So in other words, you need 1,000, and the word 1,000 is Aleph, which is like a teacher. So you need 22,000 Alafim before the Eibush to rest there, a certain level of Hashem, a very high level of Hashem. How do you shahoyi? So now the Gemara says, how do you shahoyi? So now love for She'alav Chosar. The 21,999. Only because you didn't give birth to a child, therefore we were missing one. Aren't you the cause why the Eibush, that high level of Hashem, is not resting and dwelling amongst the Eden? I'll go even much worse than that. He says that this person here who didn't bring a child into the world is actually chayiv misa. How do you know that? It says by Nadav Avihu. The reason why they died, they had no children. That is, no, it sounds like the reason why they died is they had no children. They did have children. They made sure they wouldn't have died, which is very difficult this Gemara, because the Torah clearly says the reason why they died is not because they didn't have children, but because they brought an Eish Zorah, a strange fire. So one of the pshatim is actually from my father that when a person does an avera, a terrible avera, Hashem punishes him, but also his children, and he sort of spreads the avera out, so everyone gets punished far less. But because they had no children, they had a very acute punishment, a very severe punishment, because they had no one to share it with. And so we say, because they had no children, therefore they had to die. If they would have children, they would have been punished. The children would have been punished a little bit, so it would have been very different. Others say, if you don't bring children to the world, you're causing Hashem to depart from the Eden. It says a pasuk. The Eibush says to Avram, I will be your Hashem and to your children afterwards. He says, if you have children after you, I will dwell amongst you in your family. If you don't have it, who will I rest? On the beautiful buildings, on sticks and on stones. I need people. Okay. Interesting Gemara. Okay, we'll stop here and continue tomorrow, Mitzvah.
Okay, thanks.